all Bonami's family. Great supportive community, close-knit caring family. We're non-judgy, blanket fuzzy, stigma-free. All Bonami's family, friends, family, and community. We all Bonami's family. Teacher sharing is our key. Great big thanks to you all.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Stigma Stompers, NAMI Erie County's one and only podcast. I am one of your hosts, Abby.
And I'm your other host, Janana.
Today we are talking National Recovery Month. We have here Maria and Keith Miller to talk about their daughter and addiction and the nonprofit that they run. So I'm going to let you guys take it away, introduce yourselves, and share a little bit about Taylor and your organization.
Sure. Thanks for having us. I am Maria Miller. I am the president and founder of Taylor's Hope and the mom of Taylor. Taylor is our daughter who we lost, unfortunately, to fentanyl, April 11th, 2021. Want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Keith Miller, and I am the father of Taylor and one of the co-founders of Taylor's Hope.
Well, thank you so much for both joining us and, sharing your experiences. I know it's not easy. Do you mind going back on kind of the history on how things started with Taylor and how she was, a little bit about Taylor?
Yeah, we love talking about Taylor. And we probably will with tears. I apologize ahead of time. But so Taylor's our oldest daughter, and we have two other children who are younger than her. But Taylor was your typical student, grew up in Fairview, went to Fairview High School, successful with, jobs and friends and playing sports and things like that. Was really smart and did well in school, but did struggle a little bit here and there with like anxiety and depression and sought help for that, throughout high school. She got into the physician assistant program at Gannon, which was a pretty limited admission program, but got in, was excited to get started and did really well her first year. And going into the summer between her freshman and sophomore year, she started struggling a little bit more. And again, I had some counseling and some therapy and some medication and things like that and seemed to be doing well. But then had met a friend after she had a little bit of a crisis who introduced her to heroin, unfortunately. Wow. And he pretty much encouraged her to use it to help battle, some of these issues she was having with depression and anxiety. So she did, unfortunately, and I feel like, and we've talked about this, it was kind of the turning point for her. They say, and we speak a lot at schools and stuff, and I always tell the kids there too, the things you hear, the scary things you hear about drugs are actually probably true. And
a lot of times, they always tell us you take it one time. Yeah. And, especially with the opioids, you take them one time and then, you're addicted. Mm-hmm. And that was the start, She never really drank when she was growing up. She never, I think she maybe smoked pot a couple times, from what I know, but never, just the usual high school, early college stuff. In fact, I remember the first year in college, she didn't rush a sorority because they were serving champagne at the Rush, whatever, I don't know what they call it, but, she didn't want to go there because they were serving champagne at that. So she was, that's the kind of kid she was, where, she dabbled a little bit, but... as soon as her friend, from what I understand, the friend shot her up with a needle with heroin, and after that, it was just a struggle for her and and us, the whole family.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, we talk a lot on this podcast on, a lot of times individuals who are struggling with mental health challenges, whether that be severe anxiety or depression or, PTSD or anything, they usually go to drugs or alcohol to kind of help cope because it's something that helps in the moment and it's a fast fix for them. So we do talk about that a lot, but I apologize. Go ahead.
No, that's absolutely true. And like Keith said, she was really not, into any of that. She was very focused on her academics and stuff. But, it really just took one time, and I do feel like that was kind of the turning point for all of us. She, admitted that, she didn't know if she could stop after that one time, which was frightening. So we continued to get help for her right away. And, she was in and out of treatment centers and rehabs, outpatients, inpatients. She lived with us at home, and we provided all the support we could give her. We drove her to class at the Gannon, and, anything we could do to support her. But she would continue this process of like staying clean and sober and then relapsing, and staying clean and sober and then relapsing. So she did join Narcotics Anonymous, and that was a good support. She had a sponsor. She went to meetings. We drove her. We picked her up. We stayed. I went to meetings with her. And she met a good support crew there also. And then through that process, she, would make friends, and then she'd lose the friends to overdose. And at that time, this was 2014. 2013, 2014, and heroin, it was heroin at the time, was rampant. And she just was like, going to funerals all the time, mourning the loss of all of these friends that she made. So it was really a sad time too, and at the same time, she's struggling to stay clean, So she lost a really close friend, and I think that really hit home with her, and she just one night said, I got to do something about this. And I think everybody needs to know that heroin is scary and it's dangerous and you shouldn't use it, and people are dying from it, and people need to know this. So she started this HOPE page, Heroin Overdose Prevention in Erie, literally overnight.
On Facebook.
On Facebook, yeah, a Facebook page. And I remember her coming into my room that night and saying, what should I call it? I was thinking HOPE, like Heroin Overdose Prevention in Erie, because I feel like, we're here in Erie, and this is where people know each other, and people are dying, and we have to let people know this. And I'm like, that sounds great. And by morning, she had 5,000 people following.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, this was before the algorithms of Facebook have changed a little bit since then, but 5,000 people, and she was in shock. She was like, oh my gosh. So I think she felt inspired, motivated, determined to like let it all out there. Like, now I did this, I have all of these people, and now they want to know. They need to know. So she just would be very transparent. She would get on there, and she'd take pictures of herself in active addiction. She'd take pictures of herself clean. She would tell stories, like some of them really hard, about her own, battles with addiction, her own battles with depression and anxiety. And other people would share things too. And then parents would reach out to her and say, what do I need to do? My son's struggling. Do you know of any rehabs? What's the first step? Things like that. And she would actively interact with people, messenger. She would go meet people in detox. She spoke. We got involved also, and kind of hooked up with Mary Kay Iser through the Lake Erie Road crew, because she was doing a lot of outreach and education, and we would go with her, and Taylor would speak at schools and set up a table with her, social media presence there, and let people know, what she's doing. And then she got contacted by the news, and was on the news, and was on the newspaper. And that, I think, for us was when we were like, okay, the reality and the largeness of it all, like, kind of hit us, I think, at that point, because we're like, oh my, this is big. Like, this, we had a news crew in our house interviewing her. And then, she was on the front page of the paper, and we hadn't even really shared with our family and friends what was happening in our own home. So we're like, okay, well, we're all exposed now. We need to follow her steps of what she's doing, because this is important. And so, everybody was very supportive, though. A lot of people reached out to us too and said, hey, we're here for you, so we did have a nice support crew of people. But so that's kind of how HOPE started. And she used that platform, like I said, to educate people. She shared information, what was happening on the streets in terms of what drugs are being sold and what you need to stay away from. And this is kind of before fentanyl. So it was mostly like heroin.
One of her biggest things, too, was the whole stigma, associated
Absolutely.
with the drug use and the mental illness, how, the addiction can happen to anyone at any time, and she wanted to get that out there.
Yeah.
And, we went through our own stigma. I mean, like, Maria said, a lot of our family and friends didn't even know everything that was going on at the time because, it's just something you kind of tried to bury and hope it goes away, because you don't want it really out there. And, and I had a somewhat public job at the time, and I was, I wonder how that's going to affect me. At the time, that's, what I was thinking. How is this going to affect me? How is this going to affect my family? But that's the stigma that she was trying to get rid of through talking about it, through saying, hey, I'm just an everyday person here, and look what happened to me. So that was one of the big things of her hope page, was just getting all that information out there, just showing all the people and all the faces and people talking about what's happening to them, and realizing they're not alone.
It became a really big support page for her and us, and I feel like the Erie community. I mean, I think we had a reporter mention to us later after we lost Taylor that Taylor really broke the epidemic kind of wide open for the media. They hadn't really realized how serious it was at the time, and kind of opened their eyes to what was going on. So so that's kind of where things started. But unfortunately,
Taylor, this is a long story.
Taylor continued to struggle.
It went on for a lot of years.
But I mean, it was 2013. Was when she first was introduced to heroin, and then 2014 she's losing friends, and then 2015 she's doing better, and she's got a serious relationship in her life, and she got into Boston University, and she was excited to leave Erie for a while, and nice fresh start, and she always wanted to live in Boston, so we were excited for her. It was all good. And then she moved to Boston and then did well at BU for a while, and then again started struggling a little bit, and unfortunately went back and relapsed, and we helped her from afar and drove up and took her to rehab, and so it was just kind of an ongoing situation. But in 2017, then she ended up coming home after a rehab stint and was ready to get things back on track, and went to Penn State for nursing, and was doing really well. I mean, she's living at home with us, going to NA occasionally, but pretty solid. She seemed great. And then COVID happened, and that kind of changed things a little bit. I mean, she was going to outpatient and stuff, but then outpatient became virtual, and then she had appointments, and those became virtual. So, you're home a lot, and you're dealing with people, virtually instead of in person. So I think that was really hard on her, too. But ultimately, she ended up relapsing just weeks before we actually lost her in April. So it was a very short period of time, but and at that point in time, it was fentanyl, and she knew all about it. Her and I had a conversation about it days before her passing, and she's like, I need to put this on Hope. We got to tell people, got to warn them. It's scary, So, but she was very well informed, but
unfortunately, it's hard for individuals in those situations.
Absolutely.
It's not easy to just put it down. And did she seek any mental health treatments? Do you think that played a big role in the relapse process? You mentioned going back to BU and things like that. Do you think those stressors, and because medical school or PA or nursing or anything is not easy in the medical field, do you think that contributed to kind of that relapse? Yeah,
I think so. Looking back, and I've read through some things that she, in her room is still as it was. And she was a writer, and so being able to, on very rare occasions, go into those journals and stuff, it has given a little bit of insight. But I think the struggles of, the COVID situation, the struggles and the things that she put on herself, I think, the expectations she would put on herself for things, and that's kind of her personality, though. She would, she expected A's, and she expected to get things done, and when she couldn't she struggled with that,
Right.
you know, and she would let herself down. And it's tough, nursing, you know, any of those kind of medical careers were hard. And I know she was kind of falling behind a little bit in school, but, you know, she was pretty good about asking for assistance, and she did have a pretty good support system at Penn State Barron. And she had, you know, therapies, you know, several therapists that she would see on a regular basis as well. But, yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. Thank
Yeah.
you for sharing that. We do appreciate it.
If you're comfortable sharing, what was your journey like after losing Taylor in 2021, and how did that kind of bring you to Taylor's hope?
Yeah. Well, I think year one was a blur. You know, I think you're, you know, just in shock. And, you know, we had so many people reaching out to us, people we didn't know, obviously people we knew, but the amount of people who reached out to us that we didn't know were through the Hope page. I helped her run the Hope page because when she went to Boston, her younger sister and myself, she added us on there so we could kind of respond and see messages coming in and stuff like that. And people were just kept reaching out and telling us these stories about, you know, Taylor took my phone call at 3 a.m. and helped me because I was going to, you know, use again or relapse, or Taylor met me at detox, or I remember Taylor coming to speak to us at, you know, a rehab or a, you know, Mill Creek community detox, like a bunch of different stories. And we were just like, wow, that's crazy, because we didn't really know the extent of what her work she was actually doing. You know, here she was struggling herself. She was in school, and that she was still helping all these people, you know, as much as she could. So we kind of let that sink in. And then I think like about a year later, like in 2022, maybe I had said to a few of my really close friends who've grown up with me and have known Taylor since her birth, I said, I feel like we need to do something. Like I feel like there's something that we need to do. And then Taylor's Hope got birthed from that conversation.
I think it seemed like there was something missing between the people themselves who are struggling and the families and like the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
There was a disconnect somewhere. And it felt like we were sort of on the inside of that. Like, we've experienced a lot of this, you know, but what can we do to like connect all the dots and connect everybody in this world of, you know, recovery and addiction and mental illness and parents who are grieving. And we knew a lot of them, you know, already because of Taylor's work with Hope. And then when we lost her, they all just like surrounded us, you know. And unfortunately, we've gained more, you know, people through that process they've lost loved ones since her passing. So it's just a big world of, you know, a lot happening, and we just felt like we needed to connect everybody and everything and like bring everything together, because we just wanted to like continue what she had done, because she'd worked so hard, you know, and made so many connections, but there was so much more work she wanted to do. We would talk about it all the time. Like, there were so many things she would say, like, Mom, we need this. And her ultimate vision was like, there needs to be like a whole entire campus of recovery, like inpatient, outpatient, you know, holistic medicine, like, you know, all of these things, connecting people to people, relationships, like, you know, all the therapies people need, everything that makes you feel good, you know. Like, she just always had this thought of that, and always felt like there was so much stigma, you know. And she's like, how do we, you know, what do we do about that? Like, how do we make people aware of the fact that this can happen to anybody, you know? So that's kind of what we went with, like, a lot of the things that she was, you know, wanting to continue. I think we just sort of took it and ran with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel like a lot of the time, and this goes for addiction, but also like mental health or homelessness, you're one terrible event away from that being you. You're seconds away from that being you. So I think a lot of the time, people that are struggling with any number of things become so dehumanized because people think that could never be them. So I think bringing it back to that, these are real people with real stories that have families and lives and jobs. They are also just human beings.
Right.
So humanizing it is so important.
I remember when I was growing up, the heroin and all that kind of stuff, that was, you know, those were junkies in the back alleys of major cities and things like that. They weren't, you know, you know, a 19-year-old girl growing up in, you know, suburbia. You know, it was just, you know, it was a much different picture. And now, and it's, you know, still ongoing, And that's one of the things we try to tell people is it can happen to any family.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just the rich, it's not just the poor, it's not just it's anybody on the spectrum. You know, the demographics I think have really changed over the years, and it can hit anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
During Taylor's struggles through addiction, how did that affect your guys' mental health? Because I'm sure that was tough to see your daughter go through that. How did that affect your individual mental health, especially, as a man? I know there's still that stigma. We toughen it up and we don't talk about our feelings. So if you guys don't mind sharing about your experiences. If you feel comfortable.
I still do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard.
It's hard. I mean, talking about it for anyone is hard.
Yeah,
we go to grief support groups, and we go to some special meetings. It's almost all women. There's a few men here and there, maybe some of the bigger stuff, but a lot of stuff we go to, it's all women. And usually I'm not really outspoken as it is, and not all the time, but I just sit there quietly and listen, and that's just kind of how I've always handled it. I've always kind of internalized it, and just kind of deal with it by pushing it down. I want to say that's my coping mechanism, I think.
Yeah,
and she knows that.
Yeah, and I think for me, like I'm a social worker. That's my background. So like for me, it's like I'm kind of like, what do we need to do about it? Like I'm sort of like I think
and I get dragged along.
The Taylor's Hope mission and the startup of our nonprofit was kind of my way of dealing with my grief, and what can I do with it? Like I could sit and bottle it up and lock myself in my house, but like I don't think that's what Taylor would want me to do. Yeah. And she was so passionate about her work that I was like, this is the obvious thing for us to do, and if we can help other people, like, that's, I've done that my whole life. Like that's what I want to continue to do. But certainly it's not without, counseling for, myself and therapy, and even just like, being supported by other families who've gone through this. I think that's been a big thing, and it's sad that there's so many of us. Yeah. But I have found a lot of support in that, and like even like on Facebook, there's so many groups, and I've gotten involved in a lot of them, and it's just, and I met a guy whose son died the exact same day as Taylor, the same way, and he's in Alabama, but he's doing work like we're doing here. He's educating youth, on dangers of drug and alcohol use. So, knowing like you have this like army of people is super helpful, so I feel like we've gotten some support, but I just want everybody else to feel that way, and I think that's why some of the work that we've done, that's kind of our goal is just to kind of have, I want all the parents to feel support. I want people who families currently have loved ones struggling, I want them to feel supported. I don't want them to feel the stigma like I did. Like I didn't want to go to Walmart and get, naloxone because I was embarrassed. I didn't want people in my local Walmart to see me, the pharmacist hand me Narcan and give me an education at the pickup. And Taylor was with me when that happened, like, because she would get prescriptions and they would say like, oh, do you want the Narcan? I'd be like, no, we're not doing that. She's good, So I mean, here we were, like what, and now I'm giving Narcan out to everybody. I'm like, come to my house and pick it up. Like I'll give it to. I have tons of it. Like we're happy to give it out.
It's important.
It's so important.
I think the support groups, to your point, sometimes when you're struggling, you feel like you're alone and nobody understands, but going to those support groups, you really truly do see, everyone else who is also struggling and what they're going through. So I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, and there's definitely still that stigma. That's what we're here for. Is we're called the Stigma Stompers. We want to cover all different aspects of mental health, including addiction, because they do go a lot in hand. To talk about it and for people to understand it. It's okay to talk about and seek the help that you need. So again, I can't stress it enough. Thank you both again for being here. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Talking more about what you do with Taylor's Hope, can you talk about your mission and then kind of what you're currently doing in the community to spread the word? Or
sure. So we started in 2023. I think it was March, actually, 2 years ago, almost like to the day, is when we got our okay to become a official nonprofit. So, our mission really is education, prevention, awareness, breaking down stigmas, providing support for families who've lost loved ones, families who still have loved ones struggling. And what we started out doing was our big thing, I guess, is the Afternoon of Hope. So that was kind of our first thing. And this will be our third year. It'll be May 16th this year. So what we decided, and like Keith had said earlier, like kind of connecting the dots, connecting everybody together. And that's kind of where that came from. But an Afternoon of Hope is really just that. It's like bringing everybody together. We use Perry Square because it's just a common place and it's in the city and seems logistically smart. And bringing all of the resources and information. Whoever provides resources for, substance use disorder, mental illness, or if you just want to get the word out about what you offer, as an organization. And then we ask people to come and attend. We'll have speakers again. We've had speakers in the past. We've had the mayor, the district attorney, chief of police. Every year we've tried a different, people in recovery, which I think is super important. And then it's just kind of an informational thing. So we've done that.
How many? We had like 20.
I think the first year we had 12 like exhibitors or tables, and then last year we had you guys are always there. Last year
I think it was me.
we had 40. We had 40.
Whoa, really?
Yeah. Last year was huge.
That's
and
great.
We're right now doing registration for our May 16th event, and we're up to 12 right now, but it's very early, so I'm hoping to get everybody back there again this year.
Absolutely.
So it's a nice event. It brings a lot of people together. It brings a lot of people who are an organization together with other organizations, and that's the feedback that I got from a lot of people. Like, hey, I didn't realize that this organization did this, and they didn't even know I existed. You know what I mean? So that's important. So everybody kind of networks. This is not a competition. All the services the better, right? So I felt like that was super important. So we're on our third year. We're planning right now, getting everything together. So that's May 16th. And then the other thing we've done is like I said before, we speak in high schools. We've done that, and we're always available to do that.
And some middle schools.
And middle schools, yeah. Erie City, we did a middle school there, and out at Wattsburg. So we're always happy to bring information, education, share Taylor's story, share other stories, bring other families in with stories. We do that with Mary Kay Eisert, Lake Erie Road Crew, and she does a lot of educational pieces with that as well. So we do that, and then our billboard campaign, we worked with Lamar Advertising. And
I've seen them.
Yeah. So we'll be running another, probably we kind of shoot for the nicer months when people are actually out driving around. So we've been doing like October, May, I think. But we run those billboards, and those are families, local families who've lost loved ones to substances. So it could be alcohol or whatever.
Yeah, we put a face to it.
Exactly.
They volunteer to put their loved one's face on there, and we, and because we're in a lot of schools, we've been mostly sticking with younger people, and but it's just an offshoot of our school program where. One of the things we do is display a PowerPoint that has faces of kids, and it tells what local high school they went to. It gives a statistic on something on the drug epidemic, and really has been received pretty well. So we kind of took that and expanded it to the billboards.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Is there any feedback that you can share or something that stands out, especially with the schools? Because I feel like anything, any prevention programs or discussions need to be done in the schools to help in the long run. What are some feedbacks that you received either from the schools or students on you guys going in and talking to them?
Yeah. Well, we've gotten a lot. I mean, it pretty much, I think every time we've done a school presentation, we've had kids come up to us and, say they were sorry. But some of them have also shared, like, my uncle's struggling and this is good information. So that's been good. I know we talk about the Good Samaritan law too, and Mary Kay, you know, like Erie Road Crew is really good with that kind of stuff, and she shares a lot of that. And a lot of the kids didn't realize that there's the Good Samaritan law, that if you're with somebody, you know, who is using drugs or alcohol and they have an emergency and you need to call, you know, 911, you will not get in trouble. And that was a really important piece.
At least not from the law.
At least not from, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can't speak for your parents.
No,
Right.
right. That is a good point.
I can't control that.
That is a good
At
point.
least you won't be in legal trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, good point. So so that was a big thing, and a lot of the kids were like, wow, we didn't know that, you know. So I feel like we opened some eyes, you know, and I think and a lot of the feedback from like the staff and stuff, like the kids were talking about the presentation the next day and wanting to talk about it and asking questions, which I think is super important.
That's really great.
And then the one thing that we've heard across the board is whenever we show the video, we have a lives lost presentation, and that's the PowerPoint Keith was talking about. And that kind of scrolls through the faces, and it has a little information about each person, some personal information. And everybody has said you can hear a pin drop. Like they have never seen the student body like so, you know, attentive to that particular piece. And I just think it is pretty moving. I mean, we've showed it at a couple other events too, and it's been kind of the same. We showed it at the Safe Harbor Vigil and a conference, drug and alcohol conference, and it was all the same feedback from even the people working in the field that were there, you know, who said that it's pretty moving. It's you know, makes you think, really. You know, when you see these normal looking teenagers, you know, the kid with the soccer ball who plays soccer, and you know, the kid in the student body who says, oh, it looks like my brother, or you know, I play soccer, like this could happen
Or
to me.
I know that kid.
Or or you know, that was some of it. I knew him. There was some of that too.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
So those are our big things. We have a lot more stuff we want to do. You know, unfortunately, everything, you know, costs money. And
We get that.
you know,
we feel your pain.
And the grants are, you know, few and far between, but we are definitely working on trying to raise monies, and that's what Keith was talking about, a golf outing, just to be able to do some of the other work that we want to do. And one of them is a short, like, documentary. So we're working with a production company and have some really good insight into how we would want to do that. But it would be kind of like the same as the Lives Lost presentation, but be able to kind of like expand on it. You know, that's like what, 3 minutes or 4 minutes. So this would be like a 14-minute mini documentary where we would be able to kind of expand on what we've been doing and share information and personal stories and things like that. And that could be used for education. You know, it could be available to anybody to use for whatever purposes, you know, of prevention and education and stuff. So I think that's kind of our big thing. Scholarship's another one we're working on. We're trying to get some funds for that as well. We would like to do a scholarship, maybe for somebody going into nursing school. It kind of, you know, I think Taylor would like that. So, but yeah, I think those are our big things. And there's so many more things. I mean, geez, if we won the lottery, I would, you know, I would have that campus like Taylor wanted, and recovery.
Campus would be in Florida, though.
Yeah.
Maybe North Carolina.
That is a beautiful place.
Not here.
Somewhere warm.
Right.
You know, and I think too, like the recovery community. I mean, we've met so many people. I mean, even when Taylor was in and out of recovery, you know, and we met a lot of people she met, you know, and stuff. And I've had people come up to us at events and say, I knew Taylor. And we've had so many people come up to us and say, I knew Taylor from this meeting or from this event. I'm like, you know, so I really want to support them too, like, you know, and I just, you know, I feel like there needs to be more done, especially in Erie with the recovery community. And again, it's the stigma thing. Like, you know, they are people too, and everybody deserves a second chance, regardless of what has happened or what you've been through. But like, is there enough support for people in recovery? Like, is there enough safe places for them to go? Like, Taylor always was a little bit lost because, you know, she's turning 21. You know, and she has substance use disorder. What do? You're not going downtown to the bars to celebrate, you know? So, but you still want to have that feeling of like celebrating that milestone, right? So, you know, like I said, you know, if we could do it, I mean, recovery cafes and places for people in recovery to go and build relationships, I think that's so important. Like, you know, feeling alone is just not going to work for you while you're in recovery. You have to have personal connections and relationships, and that certainly is going to help you in your recovery. But how do you build those relationships with people if you don't have opportunities to be social, or if you're avoiding bars because there's alcohol there, or, you know. So really, I think that's another, you know, lofty goal that I would love to see happen.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but
We would love to see that.
Yeah,
I mean,
right?
that is amazing things that you guys are talking about and doing. So we truly hope that you guys are able to achieve us, and keep us posted, because
absolutely,
that is
yeah.
Erie definitely needs
Yeah.
that. Every place, but I feel
I
like
know,
Erie
absolutely.
especially.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about the stigma. So when it comes to, as you guys mentioned, you know, hey, if you're with someone and you report it, you won't get in trouble by the law, of course, but you know, there's still that stigma of, what is my friend going to say? Are they going to get mad at me that I, you know, reported this? Or what advice do you have for those individuals who might be afraid of what their peers are going to say if they report it?
Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? You know, stigma's hard because, you know, you can't control other people's behaviors or how people are going to react or respond to things. So I feel like you just have to get to a place where you're okay with it. And I think that's with Taylor. You know, like she was always afraid of what people thought about her, for sure. I mean, every teenager is thinking about that, you know. But once she wrapped her head around the fact that she would continue to be supported by us, her family, and her friends, and other people in the recovery community, I think that helped tremendously. I think also, like, just the overall education of anybody in the community, just understanding and accepting of the fact that, you know, substance use is a disorder. You know, addiction is addiction. You know, nobody, and I say this to the kids too when we spoke at the schools. I said, Taylor would say to me all the time, you know, I don't want to be a person with addiction. I don't want that. That is not, nobody's is born and saying, oh, I think I'm going to, when I grow up, I'm going to, you know, be addicted to, you know, drugs. I think that, you know, nobody says that, you know, and like with her, it was just sort of like, you know, something that happened, you know, and now we're dealing with it. But I think it's just all of that education and understanding that people, you know, and Taylor did it herself. Like she educated people because she didn't want people to think badly of her. So she's like, I'm going to tell you exactly who I am and why I'm here, and this is what happened to me. And I think that helped a lot break the stigmas for her, for sure.
And I think the schools now too are focusing a lot on stigma education. Just you know, they're focusing a lot on, you got to say something. You know, you see something, you say something. I know, you know, out of that Sandy Hook Elementary, when that, you know, that mass shooting happened up there, there was an organization that came out of that called Safe to Say Something, and all the Pennsylvania schools, I know, and a lot around the country, I know all the Pennsylvania schools picked into that, and now they have a you know, a program where kids, you know, not only receive education on, you know, when you see something, say something, but they also have a reporting system where, you know, even if it's a friend using something that scares them, or if it's violence, drug related, whatever it is, doesn't matter. They have a reporting system where they can say something, and that's, you know, it's all pretty new. We didn't have that, you know, especially back when I was a kid. You know, they had bullying and that kind of education, but that's where it stopped. You know, it was never, you know, but the reporting aspect of it now has really been focused on, and I think it's going to help. And I think, you know, a lot of the education out there is what's going to erase the stigma. Just realizing that, you know, like I said before, that it can be anyone at any time. So, you know, don't be afraid to say something or do something.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We're being brought into a lot of schools with our teen mental health first aid program. And that teaches you what to do in like a crisis situation, but it also talks about what to do if someone is overdosing, how to distribute Narcan, why having Narcan is important. So a lot of schools have been bringing us in to teach that to the
recovery
teens.
position.
So, yeah,
A lot
recovery
of schools
position.
have Narcan now too.
Yeah.
In fact, I think all the Erie County schools, we checked
Yeah,
into that.
we
I'm pretty sure
looked
they
into
all
that
do.
right away too, because we wanted to make sure, you know, that was happening, and that was the other thing we do a lot of too, is just making sure, and you know, Erie County Drug and Alcohol Office, like, you know, has it readily available, and a lot of people didn't know that, and so we were just going down and getting cases of it and taking it with us to all of our events and passing it out and educating people, and I think that's part of it too, is just, you know, educating people to understand what it is, how it works, why you might need it, you know.
Don't be like us and think you don't need it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
You know, because whether you know, even if you don't know anybody who's in active addiction, you never know when you're going to run across someone who might need it.
Yeah, and actually, because we've heard back from people
just,
too about that, you know, have gotten it from us, and I've had a couple of people reach out and say, hey, thank you for that, you know, Narcan that you gave me at that event, because I just used it, you know, in a store parking lot the other day. I'm like, oh my gosh. You know, so it, you know, and we've talked to, you know, had some conversations with people at different events. We did like National Night Out and talked to a bunch of people out there, and who didn't know what it was, or, you know, and they're like, well, we don't have anybody, you know, in our families, and I said, well, you know, do you go to McDonald's for lunch? Oh yeah. I'm like, you know, could be somebody in the lobby, could be somebody in the parking lot, and then they're like, oh yeah, we'll take that. You know, if you can save a life, for, you know, my gosh.
Just put it in your glove box.
Yeah.
They're real small.
Like we've
Put it in your
armed
purse.
everybody.
Yep.
So I think that's part of the whole stigma process too, is like, you know, letting people know that these kind of things are available, and this is what we, you know, this is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
This is the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
You know, just, you know.
No, absolutely. What are some unique challenges that families face when they're supporting a loved one with addiction or mental illness? Do you think there's some signs that they miss that they could look out for, or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, wow, we've been through all of it. I mean, honestly, I mean,
we missed a lot.
We missed a lot.
We saw a lot.
You don't know what you done.
Chose not to see.
We chose. You're right.
You know,
we've done
there's
it all.
a lot of that.
We've done all of that.
We made lots of mistakes and lots of
I
good
don't-
decisions, lots of bad decisions. You know, we didn't know.
We didn't know.
And I think nobody knows. That's, you know, one thing I always say. There's no roadmap. There's nobody out there going, oh, this happened.
Right.
You know, do this.
Yeah.
And especially when, you know, when it's substance use disorder and mental illness, you know, what do you treat first, or how do you treat both? You know, and we were up against that. You know, there were I think there were some of the rehabs that wouldn't take both, wasn't there?
Yeah,
Or
I mean,
there was
yeah, I
some-
mean, like
they would treat one but not the other.
and you have to
we
find
were
the
always
right
trying
fit
to find
and-
stuff where they would treat both. I mean, why wouldn't you? Like you said earlier, it pretty much goes hand in hand a lot, and not all the time, but there's a big correlation between it. So why wouldn't you treat both? You know, so it was just, you know, a lot of hit and miss and a lot of trying. You know, luckily, you know, she was a social worker who knew. We were kind of lucky because she had a background in a lot of, you know, Maria here. I said she. Maria had a background in social work, so, you know, she knew a lot of the resources that were available and a lot of the people that, you know, were giving out the resources, so she was able to contact them. And you know, and we were also lucky with Taylor with, you know, with our insurance. You know, a lot of people don't have good insurance. We had super good insurance that, you know, that covered a lot of her rehab stuff, you know, because she was in rehab in 3 or 4 or 5 different states, 3 or 4 different states in California, New Hampshire, Chicago, Pennsylvania. I think that was about it. But anyhow, you know, so we were lucky. But what do people do that don't have access to that? You know, so like I said, you know, it's just a lot of things that, you know, you asked if there were signs. You know, yes. What they were, you know,
and I think
what they are, I
too-
think, are different for everybody. You just have to kind of trust your gut as a mom or a dad.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, like for families who are questioning, you know, and I think the one thing we always did with Taylor was like she always knew we loved her and we would support her no matter what. You know what I mean? Like, so we were always just like, tell us whatever you need to tell us, or, you know, and of course she wasn't telling us everything, but like we always opened it up, the communication, to like let her know that she's loved and supported, and we would get her whatever help she would possibly need, and we would jump through hoops to do that.
And sometimes, though, it was tough love,
but
too.
sometimes it was tough love, and sometimes we did. And I think she even said in one, there's a quote somewhere in one of the articles that were done for the newspaper or something at some point, where she said, my parents basically forced me into rehab, but it probably saved my life at the time. You know, and we did take her kicking and screaming sometimes. You know, we had crisis at our house. I mean, we had the police at her. I mean, there was so many things, but we just continuously tried and stood by her and tried to educate ourselves and, you know, find out what we needed to do. What was the best route for her, you know? So we just stuck to the plan and just, you know, we wrote contracts with her. I mean, you know, there's a lot of things, but there's definitely a lot of things to look for. You know, you asked about like, what are the signs? I mean, the most recent with Taylor was, withdrawing. Like she started sort of withdrawing from her cat, who she was obsessed with, and then she was withdrawing from family things. I'm like, this is, a little bit unusual, sleeping more often, missing appointments, missing class, staying up really late and then sleeping all day, so there were, some things just weeks prior, but yeah, it's hard to know, everything, but
it started out with her in 7th grade. Wasn't it 7th grade when she's started having anxiety?
Yeah,
I think
7th and 8th grade middle school, she started having anxiety. And that, that's hard to detect too at that age, because we always kind of wanted to say, well, hormonal things, and this is what kids do, and but yeah, you certainly ask the questions, get the help, let them know they're supported, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing with her.
It's not saying every kid with anxiety and depression is going to end up,
right.
but it's just an early sign, I think, because like we said before, they're correlated.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. No, absolutely. What do you think our Erie community can do to better support individuals with drug and alcohol substance misuse?
Well, I feel like they're doing a lot more now, but I don't know if it's because we have Taylor's Hope and we are now involved in so many more things like these. This is our 4th podcast we've done. I go to drug and alcohol meetings. I don't know if I feel like as a community we are getting stronger and we're kind of connecting a little bit more, which is super nice. But I do feel like there are still things that are lacking. Like, for example,
the sober cafes.
Yeah, like the sober cafes, more support for recovery people in recovery, the recovery community. Yeah. So that's a big one. I think more access to inpatient and outpatient facilities. Like when we were struggling with Taylor, she never got inpatient help in Erie or Erie County because there wasn't any then. We didn't know there was. So we took her, like he said, she was all over the country. California even, because we couldn't find anything suitable for her here. And that's changing though. There are more and more of that stuff happening, which is great. Recovery home, she did a sober home in Boston because we didn't have one here for her. But now I know that there are some here. They are building more. There's a lot more happening. We never knew what Narcan was until, all of those things now are just becoming more widespread. And I think, and there's so many organizations in Erie. I mean, there's, so many for mental health and substance use disorder. But it's just letting people know that that's there and that's available and what all of these different places do. What does this one do that's different than this one? Or why do I, and that's, I think, why we do the Afternoon of Hope, is just so that, everybody come down there and spread your information and share what you know and what you have available to the community. And that way people can kind of shop around and see what they might need.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like the biggest thing that needs to happen within organizations is they all need to be talking to one another and referring. If it's not going to work there, it could work here. If it's not going to work there, it could work somewhere else. Right. So I think everyone just needs to be talking to each other. And I feel like that's happening slowly. Yeah. I feel like the other problem is people are learning about these organizations and there aren't enough people to help everyone. Yeah. They're understaffed.
Understaffing, yeah.
So there may be more now, but there's not enough people in them. So it's just all very complicated.
Yeah, it's hard. And, it, like I said earlier, it's not a competition. I mean, we should be thankful that we have, this many organizations and agencies that are willing to help our community. That's great. But yeah, you're right. If we can't help you here or our waiting list is too long, then we're going to refer you over here. That's great work, really.
Absolutely.
How can anyone listening or watching get involved and support Taylor's Hope?
Sure. So we have our Facebook page, so Taylor's Hope on Facebook. We still run Hope, Heroin Overdose Prevention in Erie, and that's Taylor's thing, and she started that, and we'll always have that page on Facebook as long as they allow us to. And we do run that, and we pretty much use that in correlation with the Taylor's Hope social media. So anything we have coming up will be on either one of or both of those sites. We also have a website, taylors-hope.org. That has everything coming up, everything we've done, our story, our mission. We have, 3 or 4 pages of information, agencies, organizations that provide support.
Yeah, there's probably at least 100
there's a
resources
lot,
listed there, local, probably.
All local, like Erie. I think there might be some Crawford County.
Erie, Warren, and Crawford County.
But we have all of that on there, so that's a lot of information. So so we do that, and of course, the Afternoon of Hope. If we always want people to be involved in that. If anybody wants to help, they can connect to us through any of those avenues as well.
Yeah. Perfect.
Before we sign off today, I wanted 2 more questions. The first one is for individuals who are struggling. What advice do you have for them?
I mean, I say this all the time whenever I post anything. I'm like, just get help. Like, struggling alone is not going to work. You have to build a support system. And we've seen that. And I think that, people who are struggling just have to feel confident enough to be able to, and comfortable enough to be able to reach out for help, because there is help. There's so much help. You could walk into places and get help, we already know you can go down to the drug and alcohol office and get an Narcan and walk out with it. So there's definitely help. So it really is just really being comfortable enough to get the help. But I think that us as a community have to help with that too, like breaking the stigmas down. Like if we can't break the stigmas down and let people raise their hand and say, hey, I need help, then it's just not going to work, So for sure. And, we have had people reach out to us to ask questions about, and I will always try to point people in the right direction. I am not the expert on everything. So certainly, we would point people into the right directions for help, because it's there. Just have to get it and accept it.
Absolutely. And then my last question is for family members who have a loved one who's suffering. What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I mean, just, continue to support them and love them as best as you can. Reach out for help for yourselves. Don't forget about your own mental health. And just, continue to do what you need to do to make sure they survive. I mean, because it's a scary time right now. And we tell this a lot to the students that we work with too and talk to, is that you can't trust anything now anymore. I mean, you might have an addiction to cocaine or heroin or even marijuana, but like if you're buying it from unknown sources and it's not a prescribed medication, you're really risking your own life.
There's a lot of drugs that are available online now. Like kids can just order, and you don't know what's in there. I mean, you look at what they're seizing coming across the borders, where I saw a news article, they seized enough fentanyl to kill everybody in the United States in one shipment. And that's crazy. And it gets in stuff, even if it touches stuff. If somebody was mixing up some pill, and then but before that was mixing up something with fentanyl in it or whatever, and then he touched the other pill, they could you get parts of the pill, or you hear of kids splitting pills, like we split it 4 ways, but only one of them died because the pill was so poorly or whatever made that only the fentanyl only got in one part of the pill, so only one of the people died, and that's so it's scary.
It's a scary time for like active users, who are in active addiction, and you got to be super careful about that. And there is a lot of harm reduction supplies available as well. Taylor was all about harm reduction. She would have loved to have seen like needle exchange programs and things like that here in Erie. Like that, we had several conversations about that. But then there's also the other side of that, like, people who are just, newly experimenting and buying a pill off, some site or something and using that. It's just a scary time. So it's really like about like not sitting back and doing nothing, I think, and I think if you suspect something, then do something, whether it's your family member or a friend or whoever, because, they might be mad at you in the short term, but in the long term, they won't be, because you may have just saved their lives, because you could take one substance and that could be it.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, we know a lot of families who've lost loved ones from that as well. So
and then What are some of the resources that you think here in Erie are the most beneficial for individuals that they should definitely know about? And then, of course, if they want more, they can either reach out to us or Taylor's Hope to get more information.
Yeah, well, for substance use, I mean, Taylor went to New Directions in Pyramid. They have great, outpatient programs. Medical assisted treatment, MAT, Suboxone. Taylor used that for a while. It helped her. It's, everybody's situation's a little bit different, but whatever works for you. So, that's available through, I know at least Pyramid and New Directions, maybe other places as well. And then the mental health support, NAMI, Stairways, Safe Harbor, all of those places who provide that extra support for mental health also is hugely important for people as well. And then, obviously, if you're really struggling, have no idea what to do, I'm hopeful that if you walk into one of our emergency rooms that, we have 3 hospitals here.
Right.
And I'm hopeful that, if you make that move, they'll at least point you in the right direction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one more time, what was that website just for listeners if they missed it by chance?
Yep, taylors-hope.org, O-R-G.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us. I
Of
appreciate what you
course.
guys are doing as well.
Thank you.
It's
You as
important.
well. It goes both ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you again for joining us and taking the
Sure.
time to share your experiences. I know it's not easy, and provide everyone with the resources. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you all for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Stigma Stompers Podcast. We truly appreciate all your support.
If you want to see more about what we do in our community, make sure you check out our website. It's namierie.org. Make sure you also click on our t-shirt store tab so you can buy a t-shirt. We get a portion of all the proceeds. And make sure you sign up for our newsletter. It has all of our programming and event updates.
Another way you can get involved is if you feel comfortable sharing your personal story. You can email us at info@namierie.org, or you can give us a call at 814-456-1773.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye!